there may not be a better insight into the world of running than someone that studies the sport for a living. Sadio is a current PhD student studying exercise physiology at Florida State University while still competing on the roads, track, and trails. Sadio is a former Nebraska alumni who has run 14:30 in the 5K and 8:56 in the steeplechase from Nebraska, and is now competing for the Trail Team Elite, which is based out of Colorado. I'm excited to dive into your world of running from your perspective and hear more about your story. So thanks for hopping on, Sadio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we met out in Nebraska. Actually, I was traveling out to Colorado to kind of train, and we just happened to stop in Lincoln and kind of meet up with some of the team. And we met up with you, and we kind of stayed connected ever since. So I'm glad to have you on. And the first question I kind of wanted to ask you was about like where your passion and drive for learning and competing in this sport kind of stems from. Obviously, running at some of the highest levels now, but where that kind of drive started.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I don't think I would have ever imagined myself being where I am now, but I mean, I couldn't have asked for it to play out any better. So, like, where my running career kind of started, it was my mom couldn't pick me up from school. So, her plan was I'll throw you in cross country. That's the only sport that you can do as a sixth grader. And I would grab my backpack and then run home after practice every day. And I hated it. Like, to be completely honest, I did not enjoy it. But after a while, I had some people that were kind of like, hey, I think you could be good at this if you're serious about it. And then flash forward a couple of years, I start qualifying for like some regional and national meets, and then win the steeplechase USATF national championship or at the end of my senior year going into college. And so like there, my like I guess love for running kind of started mostly because of the connections that I was able to make like with the people. And I mean, like you just mentioned how you and I met. I think there's a lot of connections to be made here, and I think
Yeah.
that's very special. But then looking at college, I mean, same deal there. I went to school thinking I was going to be like an MD, like a medical doctor. That was kind of always the plan. But then my freshman year of undergrad, which is ironic that I'm at Florida State, but one of these guys who just graduated from Florida State came to Nebraska and was our head exercise physiologist, head of the performance department, and ran our VO2 max test for the cross country team. And I was fascinated by that. I was like, this is awesome. This is super cool. How do I get involved in this? And he was like, change your major, focus on this. You can still do the pre med thing if that's still what you want to do, but like you can knock out a lot of the same classes. There's a lot of overlap. And then, flash forward to now, I kind of had a lot of conversations with some of the people within the med space that were all, you'd be a fine doctor if you wanted to be, but in terms of what you're trying to do, you're going to get there a lot faster. And you'll be a lot happier if you are doing it this way. And it worked out that I already had the connections to Florida State with some people that are very like well rooted within this space. And so I was able to leverage that, and then now we're here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Obviously, it's a tough major. It's a tough kind of field to get into. Balancing that alongside of running at some of the highest levels in the NCAA, there's a lot of people that I know personally, I'm sure you know as well, that kind of have this thought that like you can really only be fast if you're only focused on running. Like if you're just pick an easier major and then you can run fast. What were some of the struggles that you faced in the NCAA while you were competing at such a high level and also studying something that most people don't study, regardless of being a student athlete? How are you kind of able to balance all of that?
Yeah, it's hard. I think everybody kind of has this idea that if you're good at something, it just kind of comes naturally. That's definitely not true. Like for some people, that might be, but like I'll speak for myself. It's still very hard. Like there's a lot of it's a balancing act. And I think that's basically like how I would describe it. There's going to be times where it feels very easy, and it's like, okay, I can do this all day. Other times, like you're questioning yourself, you're doubting your ability to do the work, whether it's on the track or off of it. And I think probably the biggest lesson that I've learned throughout all that is just making sure that you're keeping an even keel. Um, I mean, there's going to be, ebbs and flows with it. Running does not care how much work you put into it. Like you could have the best season in terms of like the training, but then the times don't reflect that. Same thing in the classroom. Sometimes you prepare as hard as you want for an exam and it still doesn't go your way. And you just kind of have to take that, like roll with the punches and understand that, one mark or one season really doesn't affect like your whole trajectory. So
Yeah.
for me, like I would say, again, like it's hard. The balance is definitely like it's still a learning curve. Like I'm still learning a lot about it. I definitely thought after my first semester of the PhD that I wouldn't be able to keep doing the act just because I mean, some of the classes I was taking, you're studying probably like 8 hours a day for it.
Oh my.
But like at the on the back end of it now, I'm like, okay, now that I know that I can survive that, everything else this semester has been like a cakewalk.
I bet. That's ridiculous. Obviously, now, like as a PhD student, like you just said, it's even harder than potentially it was in undergrad. But how are you able to balance the training kind of aspect? Like, was that the same kind of like, hey, I need to take a couple easy days because I've got so much on my plate academically, or when did you take advantage of the academics were a little bit easier? Now it's time to kind of push. Were you in situations like that in Nebraska?
So the undergrad and like I mean I was doing my master's at the same time. I think the NCAA system is a little bit challenging with working around that. There's very few coaches that I've encountered that are very much like, I can handle tailoring individual training to all my athletes, but still
Yeah.
finding a way to promote, like that team aspect of it. But I think, in some ways it's a benefit, in other ways it's a, massive challenge. But majority of the training that I do now is on my own, and so I have that flexibility of, if I need to take an off day, communicate that with my coach, and we'll alter our training that way. So that's definitely helped it be more sustainable. But again, I mean, hats off to anybody that's in the NCAA system. It's definitely the most challenging time to be there because like you were stuck to a schedule. There's not really a ton of flexibility just because again, um, if you're not performing well, unfortunately, a lot of the times coaches will just say, hey, like we have other people that are, we'll let them go. And sometimes you get kind of put on the back burner, and that's definitely tough. And that I think that just speaks to those who are able to make it work. But again, like with the class load, there's definitely a lot more challenges there. Like, I mean, if you're having, I think a pretty common issue with our team is if you were in this major, you probably had to take anatomy, and they're very, very strict on, you can't miss so many lab days or you can't miss so many lectures. And so for sometimes, like, you would have to miss a big meet because you just had to be in class. But I mean, now that's not really the case anymore. Like, I can kind of change my stuff around so that I'm putting myself in the best position to be successful.
Yeah, and now you've traveled across the country, ended up at Florida State, being able to train on your own while training with a coach. You've also jumped into kind of a new side of the sport a little bit here and there with the trail running. How did that end up like coming about, and what was the experience like working, or what has it been like working with the trail team?
Yeah, it's it was definitely an adjustment. I would say a rude awakening is an understatement. I think being from Colorado, I used to think like we're the hardest runners out there because we know how to handle altitude. We run on trails and stuff. But then when you actually try to race on them, it's like, oh God, this is this is hard. I definitely got humbled. And I mean, I'm very, very thankful for the experience that I was able to get this summer because it definitely taught me a lot about a person as far as, like what am I able to handle and what can I push through. So like it all started with Andy Wacker, former Colorado alum. He had reached out to me over Instagram and said, hey, like I think this might be something that you want to apply for. No guarantee that you get it, but if you do, I think it'd be a great opportunity for you. And this is in the middle of like the indoor season, and I just, at first I kind of brushed it off, and I was like, what, maybe it'd be a good opportunity post college and see what happens with it. So I apply, end up getting accepted with five other like very very qualified athletes, and from there it was just kind of all right. We're gonna hop in some road races or I'm sorry, some trail races and kind of see what happens. So I started my little campaign out in Vale with a 12-mile race, which that was the longest I'd ever raced a distance. And I mean, I got humbled very quickly. One, because I did Nebraska, where it's very, very flat relative to, um, a Black Diamond ski slope, and you're just running up and down some very disgusting elevation. And then
Oh,
every race I did afterwards was just even worse because it was like it just got harder and harder. And like I didn't think it could get any harder until it's like, hey, you're actually competing in one of the hardest races in the U.S. And then it's like, oh, you're also going to go compete in one of the hardest races in Italy. And I'm like, great, that's awesome. But the mental toughness that I think I gained from that has really helped my game now because it's like you've, and by saying you, I mean me, like I've endured some really like hard moments where it's, you're out on the side of a mountain, you've still got 12 miles of climbing to do, and your body's screaming at you because it's super hot, you're dehydrated, you didn't feel well enough because you didn't understand how long you were going to be out here for. And again, like you're just having to tell yourself the next aid station is 4 miles from here. So if you can make it 4 more miles, then you'll be okay. Um, and I mean, I'm definitely going to hop in some trail races this summer because again, I do think like it's a very, um, it's a very fun like environment and I really enjoy the community. But that level of racing is different. It's a different beast.
did being a steeplechaser ever help? Like, do you think that was an advantage, or did it not matter at all?
I would actually say it was a massive advantage, and I think it's actually really funny that in talking with a lot of the people that are on the team, a majority of them come from like a steeplechase background, and
Yeah.
that's honestly what they're trying to recruit when they're like picking up people for the team. So I think like the main thing is mostly just like trail running and mountain running, which are two very different sports, but there is a lot of overlap in the sense of like those races are almost like fartleks. You have a period in which you're really pushing, and then you get the downhill where you're also pushing, but in a different way. And so having that ability to like kind of know how to turn it on, turn it off, much like you would in a steeple is very important. But then also having those good proprioceptive skills where if you're, bounding off of rocks or barreling down a downhill where you've got a like massive rock field, knowing like good foot placement is really important. And I think like just having that awareness from steeple has really made that part like seamless.
Yeah. Has kind of the education background too, in terms of like what you're learning about and what you're teaching about, kind of helped as well with training and figuring out like how to run these races and fueling and everything like that, or not?
Oh, I'd say 100%. And I mean, it's great because I mean, I can give that same advice to the people that I work with. I think athletes are very funny because you get kind of two people. You have some that are like very in tune with all the little things, they want to know all the details. And then you get the other half who's just like, I'm just out here. I can do whatever I need to with or without like all the science.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been really awesome being out here because I mean, I think I used to have, or at least what I thought was a good understanding of things, and now it's kind of just been flipped on its head where there's all these new things you need to think about. There's all of these new, I mean, and this is just the state of where we're at with like the ability to access information. There's so many different like things that you can do to like try to help performance, but like at the end of the day, um, I'm really just learning now like how to manage that as far as like, okay, somebody comes to me with this supplement, hey, should I take this because of da 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 da? Now I have to look at it and kind of internalize it where I've got to work backwards. Okay, why would they want to take this? What does it do mechanistically? What is that going to do at the cellular level? And then work forward and be like, okay, this is what it's going to do physiologically. Is that going to help you? And then, if it's something that's pretty like novel, like we don't really know a lot about it, we then have the opportunity to do some research and kind of try to get some more definitive answers.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So like, I know you're teaching a course while you're at Florida State, but obviously you're still learning. How are you? Is that something? Obviously, that's something that you're kind of internalizing and understanding about your own training. But what else have you learned, and what are you teaching that you're able to apply to your own training as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot because I mean, again, like we are told as distance runners, like carbs, carbs, carbs. Like carbs are super important, and that like I've known for a long time, but now it's like I'm seeing why they're important, and it's for things that are like just outside of, like oh, just energy production. Like there's a lot of recovery things that's really important for, as well as like protective factors. And then on that same line, it's like, okay, when we talk about the signaling of stuff, like where are carbs being used in terms of, making our receptors for signaling for different things. So like when we're talking about, like I've been doing a lot of work with EPO lately.
That's
And
cool.
that's a glycoprotein, which means like it has carbs essentially attached to it because it has sugar on it. So that's something where like if you don't have a lot of those micronutrients, then you're not going to be able to synthesize things as effectively, and that's going to hinder your performance and just your overall health.
Oh wow. So are you taking EPO? No, I'm joking.
No, 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 none of that.
No, I'm joking. That's cool that you get to do research. Do you guys do research on a lot of like performance enhancings, or do you just do kind of research on like anything that's really developing and new?
It's kind of a bit of everything, and I mean, so to your point with like EPO, I think that one is like very misunderstood in a lot of ways because like EPO is actually a hormone that you make naturally.
Yes.
Um, so like you can obviously abuse it and do some like not so cool things with it in our sport, but at the same time, like I can't really say a ton about this right now, mostly because I haven't like officially received the funding, but like we're working with a company now to see if like ketone supplementation can actually boost EPO, and there is some literature already that says that where if you were to take ketone like on top of like some carb drink in the middle of exercise, you will naturally boost your body's natural production of EPO, which wouldn't really be all that helpful from a performance standpoint, but from a recovery standpoint, it's huge.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff with that. And I mean, we've done studies in the past with like iron supplementation. I mean, there's a ton of different research out there as far as like branched chain amino acids and things of that nature.
Yeah. So what I want to this has kind of been like a controversial kind of topic over the past couple of years. I think whenever it broke about like saunas being able to increase EPO, some people have said that that's kind of like not real. It doesn't work like that. What is your take on the kind of sauna method that Andrew Huberman has come up with? Do you think it actually would be beneficial for runners to get that recovery boost?
So saunas are really interesting to me, and I mean, I'll be completely transparent. I don't know all the literature behind it, but like thinking about it, like in terms of what would lead to having that response of elevated EPO, like, I mean, a lot of benefits as is. For one, like you can sit in a room and not do anything physically, but your heart rate will naturally get up pretty high. So obviously, like from a circulation standpoint, that's great. That's active recovery in the sense of you're getting more blood flow to, flush out some of those toxins that are going to be helping like promote inflammation. So that's definitely a good thing. Um, there's a lot of like vasodilatory effects just because of what happens when your body gets hot. So that would be again pretty important in terms of like better regulating that. I would definitely be interested to see if so like without getting too sciencey on you, um,
No, you're good.
like EPO production typically stems from like being in an environment that doesn't have a lot of oxygen, so that would be like considered a hypoxic environment. I'm
Okay.
interested to know if like because of the environment that you're in where it's like very, very hot like that, what the O2 saturation would be like. Because if the O2 saturation isn't super high, then your body would naturally say, hey, I'm going to release these hypoxic induced factors that are going to essentially promote the production of EPO. And if that's the case, then you're going to definitely see that rise in EPO.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's something I've obviously never looked at like the cellular level before. I've just kind of seen like the take from Andrew Huberman. I think Cole Hawker and Cooper Tier now are getting posted about their sauna to ice bath recovery routine and doing hot and cold therapy. But I wanted to ask you a question, kind of following up on this. Like, what has been the biggest piece of information, or like the most beneficial thing that you've learned or studied through the sport, like while studying what you do study?
You know, there's a lot of, and I mean, when I say a lot, that's definitely an understatement too. Like I've learned a lot in the last like year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the one thing that is like consistent is that there is no absolutes in all of this. Like I could sit here and learn, okay, your body's going to behave like this. But then if I apply that to myself, I apply it to you, we're probably both going to behave differently.
Wow.
And I think that's probably like the biggest lesson as an athlete to learn is it's like, again, take the sauna stuff. If it works for you, great, do it. I'm not going to tell you to stop. But if it doesn't help performance, then why bother with it? So that's something where
Right.
again, like, I could sit here and like learn all this stuff where it says like, hey, this is going to be great for your performance, but in like an application sense, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's actually going to spill over. And so, like discerning that on my end as a practitioner, it's important to understand that like just because I think that something or someone will behave a certain way doesn't mean that that's how it's going to play out.
Wow. I mean, going back to your kind of talk about like how it's tough for college coaches to be able to apply individual training. It's some of the training does work for certain people, some of it doesn't work out like that. It's cool to see that even on like a supplement standpoint or, a cellular level that even that comes down to just the individual level of whether it will work or not. Um, that's interesting. And then I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about like what you've been doing in terms of racing. Obviously, we talked a little bit about like the education piece of this, but you've also been competing in some major races while studying all of this. You even won the Tallahassee Half Marathon, where you broke 70 minutes. And what has that training kind of been like now that you are on your own? You're training with Andy Wacker, but you're also studying PhD. Like, what has that been like now that you're out of that NCAA system and that training is completely individualized?
Yeah, so my training is actually written by like we kind of work together on this, but his name is Michael Jordan, not the basketball player. um, but he and I have known each other for a while, and at a race last year at Stanford, he kind of reached out and was like, "Hey, when you're done with Nebraska, reach out to me, let me know if you want to talk training." And he took me under his wing, and basically from there it was like, okay, steeple is the focus, but we're going to kind of throw in some other things just to kind of see where we're at. And it's been really interesting for me because I think we've definitely teased out that I'm not the type of runner that I thought that I was. I was kind of under the impression that I was a miler, like like I'm not running good miles, but I don't really know why. But
Yeah.
really, I think it was just like I'm more of a 5K, 10K guy that really wasn't doing the volume in the way that I needed to when I was in college. So now, like flash forward to February when we did the half marathon. The half marathon wasn't like the focus of my training. It was
Right.
you're going to go out there the first 4 miles. Like his rule was you were not allowed to be a leader. You could not like be anywhere near the front of the field. And if you were, then you couldn't be anything higher than like fifth. And I was like,
Okay.
that's a very weird way to race, but whatever. I trust you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the other rule he had was like you can't run the first 4 miles anything faster than 5:30. So I'm sitting here and I was like, okay, this is again 5:30 to me for like a half marathon seems like a lot, but at the same time, like we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And the race plays itself out. I run like 5:10 averages for the last 9 miles, and I'm like, what happened here? Like I wasn't able to do any of that in the past. Closed the last like half mile in 4:30 pace, and I'm like, this is like I've never had this kind of strength. And he was like, what's beautiful about that is we're like again we're not training that. Like you're just really strong right now, and if we keep focusing on the little things, making sure that again you're taking care of your body, but also like making sure that you're not overdoing it on workouts, it'll work out perfectly. And then now we're focusing more on steeple races. So Pepsi Florida relays, that one kind of the same deal where the rules were the first 5 laps I couldn't be anything other than fifth, and then for the sixth lap I could move up to second but could not take over until the last 600. And so like to me again like a lot of little rules where I'm like you've got to be pretty fit in order to like actually be able to execute that plan.
Yes.
But I trusted what we were doing training wise. It worked out. I cracked 9 minutes for the first time, and ran 8:56, and then um, following week won again at the Tom Jones Memorial Meet, kind of doing the same deal where it was like practicing more tactical racing, so sitting in the back and then trying to move up the last 3 laps to close something. And so now I think we're in a good place, looking at going to Oregon Twilight in 2 weeks to hopefully go hunt a really fast time there.
Right. That's an interesting way to kind of go after racing, like opening up, being strategic about it rather than like, hey, we're gonna go all out and just, try and run, 850 or sub 850 when you're in shape to probably run something that would be in a massive PR. Even 856 was a pretty big PR, but like just even being strategic about it almost has to give you some sort of confidence of like, I didn't even lead, until 600 meters to go. And that's interesting. That's a cool way to go about that. Have you enjoyed kind of this new style of training and this kind of like strategic approach to racing?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very different from what I'm used to. I mean, for one, I think probably the biggest change has been like the time that I do my exercises. Like some days I can get up and do my workout between like 6 and 8 a.m. Other days I'm starting my run at like 10 p.m. and that's just what it is because of like whatever time I'm in the lab. But yeah, I mean, like the mentality that I think I have about running has definitely changed in the sense of like my confidence is definitely much higher, and I think that's just because like my coach, like he truly does believe like if you keep doing what you have been and you truly believe what we're doing, you're going to be able to run whatever you need to. It's just a matter of again believing it yourself. And so now when we get into those races, he's like, here's a plan. I know you can execute it. Just be smart about what you're doing, and it should be good.
Yeah, and obviously continuing that kind of step by step approach of like it is working out, I'm able to execute these has got to be building that confidence as well. But my other question is, what are some of those future goals looking like now that you're kind of building that confidence? You've got the training under your belt. You've understood like, okay, I'm by myself now. I'm out of the NCAA system. Like, what's kind of in the future for you now?
Yeah, so I think I've got a lot of really cool opportunities that have kind of opened themselves up in the last couple of months. But so my mom is from the Ivory Coast originally, and I think for me right now, one of the things I'm looking at doing is like changing my affiliation to being with the Ivory Coast, mostly because I think there's an opportunity there to kind of rewrite some records.
That's cool.
That country historically has not had like a ton of distance running representation, and so right now looking at like a lot of their records, I would be like pretty high up on those lists, which I think would be kind of cool. And if I can break those records, that would be awesome because then I'm kind of doing two things. One, like, just the fact of having a record is cool. But at the same time, I think thinking much bigger than myself, there's that kind of the same thing that got me into this sport where, you see somebody that's above you that's doing it and it's, you have that thought, well, why not me? Why can't I do that? So hopefully, over time, somebody from the Ivory Coast will see what I'm doing and be like, hey, I can do that. And then we get this transition to being where nobody thought about distance running to hopefully like we can now be competitive with some of those other countries in the future.
Right. That's interesting. I didn't know that you had the affiliation there. Our Penn State national champion last year was also
Yep.
Ivory Coast, Sheck Natreo, which is now a pro with Adidas. So maybe you two will be the next generation for the Ivory Coast. That's pretty sweet.
I was gonna say I
I
actually
have
ran into him last week.
Really? Is he in
Yeah.
Tallahassee? I thought he was. That's awesome. Yeah, he's such a cool dude, man. He's like so chill. He's just humble. He's a good dude. That's cool that you guys got to run into each other. I have three kind of quick questions to finish off the episode. The first question I had was, what is one thing that you learned while studying the sport that you wish other people knew about running?
Ooh, okay, I'll actually challenge you with this. Do you want me to give you something specific to running or more of like a philosophy around running?
Either one, take a pick.
Right. I would say that if you want to truly get good at the sport in a very roundabout way, stop caring about it. Um, because like, and I take this from Shadrach Kipchirchur and Sam Chalinga. I had the opportunity to run with them every time I go home, but
That's awesome.
there was a point where I was struggling with like just my mentality around running, and I was like, how do I break this? And he essentially said, if you really care about this, stop caring about it. Because when you care way too much about something, you're going to like fixate on every little thing, and all that does is just like build up dread, anxiety, and pressure that you don't need. When you stop caring about it, it's like you become loose. You know, little things don't bother you as much, and you're able to just really focus on what you're trying to do. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest shifts again from moving away from like being on a team setting is I don't have a lot of those added pressures anymore, and it's like I can really focus on just being happy with what I'm doing, and I think that's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a cool philosophy. That's something that I think is interesting. I think it's something that a lot of people would take post injury as well. Like, just let the sport kind of go for a little bit and
Yeah.
come back to it when you're like, you're fully there and just kind of build up. So that's a cool philosophy. The second question I had was your best memory from track and field so far.
Ooh. See, that's another tough one. I mean, I would definitely say all the friends that I made along the way have definitely made a lot of like some of the times that I've ran a lot more fun. Because I mean, some of the PR races have been great, but at the same time, like it's some of those races where like I had a breakthrough and some teammates had a breakthrough that like I really just remember. I mean, like conference, for example, was really special just because um, like both me and one of my other teammates had just great days back to back, and it was like we could not have like pictured anything better. And then being able to add a Big Ten like conference title to that as well just made it all the more sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think those team moments are way cooler than any individual kind of achievement.
No, I totally.
Last question. Last question is your favorite professional athlete or top three professional athletes to watch right now.
Ooh, all right. I would definitely say. I mean, I like Ingebrigtsen. He's fun to watch.
Dog.
I'd say the Goose. He's obviously got a special place in my heart after what he's done this past summer. Same with like Kenneth Rooks. Um, I mean, I like some of the like the steeplers. I mean, I have again very high revere for a lot of those guys, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, oh, I could go down like a long list. There's a lot of those guys overseas that I'm like, you guys know what you're doing. You're fun to watch because like they're just very tactical when they race.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like Sufyan El Bakkali, he's a really tactical racer that he's very tactically smart. Like he reminds me a lot of like Wes Ferguson, for example. Like Wes is just fun to watch because for how he runs his races, you would sit there if you didn't know track and be like, ah, he's off the back. But then he just
Yeah.
so well off the end and he ends up winning these races. And I'm like, that's so fun to watch.
That's awesome. Well, those are all the questions I have, man. Thanks again for the time. It was good to catch up with you again, and wishing you the best of luck moving forward. Obviously, with the trail team and everything else going on, obviously with school, and we'll have to link up when we're back in Colorado, man.
Oh, you know it.